A very warm welcome to you all. My name is Sarah Elson-Rogers and I am the team leader for the BILT project at UNESCO-UNEVOC. I'm happy to open our second BILT Learning Lab today to present an innovative example in skills development and entrepreneurship from Africa. Today we will present an example of a makerspace from Kenya called Gearbox. Before starting, I will say a few words about housekeeping. If you would like to hear today's discussion in French, please click on the globe symbol at the bottom of the page. If you wish to have subtitles, please click on the CC Live button, also at the bottom of the page. Please note, today's Zoom session will be recorded. And if you wish to raise a question or to make a comment, you can use the chat function. During the discussion session, you can also use the raised hand function to ask a question. Last but not least, please turn off your microphones when you're not speaking. Today's Learning Lab is divided into three parts. First, I'm going to introduce the objective of our Learning Labs and give a broad overview of the Gearbox Makerspace in Kenya. I will finish this introduction by playing a short 3-minute video. The video is subtitled and the French translation will continue whilst the video is playing. In 15 minutes or so, I will then hand over to my colleague Wilson, who is going to discuss the Gearbox project with our guest speakers. The third part of the Learning Lab will take place after the formal closure at 11:30. Between 11:30 and 12, you can take the opportunity to meet the speakers more informally and to discuss further with them. Please note that the Meet the Speakers session will not be translated or captioned. If you would like to participate, please just stay in this Zoom call. Before introducing today's guest speakers, I will say a few words about the Learning Lab, the concept of a makerspace, and how Gearbox operates. Today's Learning Lab is part of a series of events hosted by the BILT project. BILT stands for Bridging, Innovation and Learning in TVET. The BILT project is co-implemented by UNESCO-UNEVOC, situated in Bonn, Germany, and the German Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training, known as BIBB. The BILT project is sponsored by the German Ministry for Education and Research. The purpose of the BILT project is to create multiple opportunities for TVET stakeholders from Europe, Africa, and Asia Pacific and beyond to discuss and exchange information on TVET trends, challenges, and innovations. The Learning Labs provide one such opportunity for global and intra-stakeholder discussion and exchange. Today's Learning Lab with Gearbox Kenya is an example of a makerspace. Makerspaces, as the name suggests, provides a space for people to make stuff. But they can be so much more than that. Whilst makerspaces often sit outside of the formal TVET system, they can assist people in skills development and entrepreneurship. Examples of support for skills development include providing training courses in utilising the Makerspace machinery, providing guidance services to help people identify their skills development needs, and helping people to access services to recognise and certify their existing skills and competencies. Makerspaces may have their own in-house trainers and/or have links with local TVET providers. Examples of support for entrepreneurship include providing access to investment finance to establish a business, providing advisory services and entrepreneurship training, supporting product design and development for commercial sale, including, for example, applying for a patent. Other examples of support for business development include matching a product with a potential buyer, providing a collaboration space for micro businesses to network and to undertake research together. Many countries have makerspaces available for people to develop their skills and to create commercially viable product prototypes. Not all makerspaces are high tech. In some countries, they are community embedded spaces which are locally supported and financed and which provide pooled access to specialist high and low tech machinery. Today's Learning Lab will describe and discuss specifically the case of the Gearbox Makerspace. The purpose is to provide some contextualization and to provide an opportunity to discuss what makes this good idea work in practice. What are the pitfalls and what are the factors for success? In each of the Learning Labs, we also invite those who have participated in the practice to tell their stories and to share their experience. So just to introduce the specific makerspace, which is Gearbox, it operates in Nairobi. It was set up in 2019 with the support from the MasterCard Foundation and the Kenya Commercial Bank Foundation as part of the Young Africa Works project. As I said earlier, makerspaces provide a variety of services and support for trainees and entrepreneurs. Specifically, the Gearbox Makerspace supports product design and manufacturing by providing people with the training and services necessary to bring a product to market. Gearbox offers a space and the equipment to design, fabricate and manufacture those products. Gearbox also offers the coaching, training and facilitation for people to use the machinery and the space to turn ideas into a real product and to support potential commercialization by offering investment and matching products to market demand. People can access Gearbox facilities by paying a flat rate monthly fee. It operates like a gym subscription. The fee covers the use of machinery and materials, and Gearbox services provide a one-stop shop, providing access to machinery, business services, and to local business networks. Essentially, Gearbox lowers the barriers to market access for people without capital and equipment, who are often those traditionally excluded from entrepreneurship. So it's my pleasure to introduce our four speakers, and I hope we have four. I know that one of our speakers had trouble joining the Zoom call today, who will be presenting and discussing the Gearbox rationale, how it operates, and its results. So a very warm welcome to Mr. Kamau Gachigi, the Gearbox founder and executive director, and to Mr. George Makateto, who is the Director of Industries, Engineering and Construction from the Kenyan Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives. It's also my pleasure to introduce Ms. Nzambi Mati and Mr. Nicholas Kimali, both of whom have utilised the services of Gearbox and have gone on to set up their own businesses. So thanks for being here today to share your knowledge and experiences with us. And thanks also to the many people who have joined our Learning Lab. Please enjoy the video, the discussion, and feel free to ask questions through the chat function or by raising your hand. And after the video, my colleague Wilson will take over.
The modern technological changes place young people in Africa as the least advantaged in employment due to lack of hands-on training. These youth are mostly high school graduates, universities, and those already into startups.
Gearbox is a non-profit organization whose aim it is to facilitate for people with an idea for a product or a machine to be able to manufacture that and enter into the marketplace.
Apart from gender balance, we take students from different cultures, lifestyles, and across the country, which helps us spread the economic value and helps networking of students around the country as well.
With the inception of the Makerspace project, Gearbox seeks to create an easy path for the youth as they transition into employment by providing access to modern technology. This places them ready for employment in industries that use modern technology and also makes respective entrepreneurs ready to compete with others in the market as well as grow their businesses, which in turn brings benefits to their respective communities.
The Makerspace project specifically is a project in which we train young people to be able to use machines, and what we do is we link them to the market. So we go and find orders for them, bring them back, train them on how to make those specific products, whatever it is, and it's on-the-job training. They're able then to earn some money and at the same time gain skills that are very important for their future.
The Makerspace project has helped me in tapping into the network. This is either through technical or financial assistance. And then the final one is prototyping. The machines we have in our facility, we prototyped here, and every single addition and upgrade we do, we prototype at this Makerspace. So I'm really happy and fortunate to be part of this Makerspace.
With the new electronics plant, I will be able to produce everything locally.
Our expectation of the project is to be able to develop a lot of micro industries. That means satisfying the market for a wide range of products that people need on a daily basis, from water tanks to sheet metal type products and a variety of other things. And as well as that, to generate jobs through that micro industrialization, which is critical for the development we seek as a nation. So TVETs train young people on various types of technologies and they give them technical skills. And the way that we mesh with that is to be able then to help them to get real life experience in terms of those skills that they've been taught, and also to connect so that there's an incubation element as well, such that those who wish to go into their own business producing things are able to do so through our center, where the machines are available for them. They don't have to buy their own machines in the beginning, and over time they should be able to grow to a point where they have their own micro industry. So it's a natural way for the TVET graduate to be ushered into the marketplace through an incubation space.
So thank you very much, Sarah, for your opening remarks. And thank you, Gearbox, in the person of Kamau, for having prepared this very nice video, especially for our learning lab. And I would like to take the opportunity to inform our distinguished audience that this video is being released today. So if you want to download it, to use it in your environment, it will be available at the BILT webpage at the UNESCO-UNEVOC website. And I need to say I'm very anxious to hand over the word to Kamau. It will be a very exciting presentation, to a very nice discussion. But I just would like to go a little bit down in what Sarah has already said, and it's the reason why we are here today. So we understand that TVET has a prominent role to play in what regards to innovation. We think that TVET systems are very well placed to bridge the gap between academic research, where developed in the universities, and mass production. So acting in the so-called pre-competitive phase of innovation. And Sarah has brought some examples of how this work of makerspaces can take place. So through prototypes, technological validation, product definition, and even product development. And one aspect that I think it's relevant for us to discuss and bring and sensitize TVET systems across the world, it's what is the benefit for the TVET systems by adopting this approach, by taking part in this innovative institutional arrangement. So we understand that when TVET institutions start to move to this pre-competitive phase of innovation, they have at least three main benefits. The first one is that they have a first-hand vision or impression of the qualifications and competencies that are in need in the society and in the market. This would be the first reason or benefit for TVET systems. The second, it's a very practical one. It's the generation of extra budgetary resources through the provision of non-traditional services. So institutions could not only deliver the teaching and learning, but while teaching and learning also provide services. And thirdly, it fosters in the TVET institutions to develop new teaching and learning approaches. So students have the opportunity to work on project-based learning or work-based learning, and also teachers have a very practical manner to be upskilled and reskilled. So there are several benefits for this approach that we are going to share with you today. And as Sarah said, the second session of our Learning Lab will take a form of a panel in which we will explore the frame conditions that allowed Gearbox to flourish. We also explore the challenges Gearbox faced along the way and the main outputs and benefits that's now generating for the Kenyan society. So we will explore that with our guest speakers, and this session will be followed by a Q&A where our audience will have the opportunity to engage directly with our guests. So without any ado, I would like to invite Mr. Kamau Gachigi to share this screen with me, and I welcome you here to the Learning Lab today, Mr. Kamau.
Thank you very much. It's a real pleasure and honor to be here to share our experience with all the people who have logged in. And special thanks to you at UNESCO with the BILT program for supporting us to be able to do this, including to be able to make that video that everybody saw. So I'd just like to begin by making a small correction. I think we provided some information regarding our setup and how we started, especially with relationship to a project that we had with the MasterCard Foundation. In fact, the genesis of Gearbox was in 2016. So a number of years before we began working with the MasterCard Foundation and the Kenya Commercial Bank Foundation. And the main funder for our work is the Lemelson Foundation, which is a foundation out of the US in Portland, Oregon. And they've supported us from the beginning. And I'll be saying a little bit about that as I speak, because I think that in terms of what you touched on, challenges with this kind of a setup, it's really very important to speak about funding as a central part of how to set up a space like this. But what I'd like to begin by saying is that the entire reason for setting up Gearbox had to do with trying to get relevance for the people that I was teaching at university within an engineering department, so that all I was witnessing until that time was we were preparing people for work, whereas they were, in terms of their projects and the subject matter that they were being taught, also encouraged to be relevant in terms of designing products and even machinery for the local setup. What was really quite obvious was this wasn't happening at all. And so we find that in terms of the marketplace, products are coming from outside of the country mainly, and those that are in the country tend to be not very effectively designed. Very often you'll find, depending on which stratum of the manufacturing sector, which I can just broadly divide between the informal sector and the formal sector. So with the formal sector, you have the kinds of products you might find anywhere in the world, and there are challenges there with regard to efficiency and competitiveness. And then, of course, the informal sector is enormous in countries like ours. And you have people who have very little education, very low productivity, and they need to be able to be supported to be more efficient in what they make so that they can have some formality enter into their operations, and therefore they can get more business, they can get loans, they can grow. And so this emphasis on micro industries, which you heard in the video, has to do especially with that sector. And so we had in Kenya already gotten this name, the Silicon Savannah, because Kenya is the first country in the world to start commercially providing money transfer, mobile money transfer. So we've been doing this from the very long time ago, and it ushered in a lot of new types of businesses based on what's broadly termed tech. So which is really software based, like apps in the fintech space, in all kinds of spaces. And so we've seen a lot of success in that area, but we didn't see a commensurate type of success or entry into the marketplace from people who are making hardware or who are making actual products, or even much less making machines. And so this is what was really the inspiration to start Gearbox. And the first thing we did while I was still at the University of Nairobi was to start a Fab Lab. I think many of the listeners may be familiar with the Fab Lab setup, which comes out of MIT. And as far as makerspaces goes, this is one of the more successful makerspace networks. It's all over the world. And so we set that up at the University of Nairobi, and we found very quickly that there were challenges regarding especially the bureaucracy at the university. So we had the right people, we had the students in place, we had many lecturers who were getting involved, we had a cross-interdisciplinary type interactivity at the Fab Lab. So very often in institutions of higher learning, you don't find mixing between electrical engineers, mechanical engineers in terms of their lab experience and projects. But here in the Fab Lab, everybody is welcome. And very importantly, also people who have no relationship to the university at all, or people within the university who are not engineers, business students, art students, architects, all coming into this space. And as I said, people who also are from outside of the universities. And so for in terms of a working definition of makerspace, we refer to makers as those people who don't have an engineering background, but who can come into the space and still use the equipment, even though at what we call a high level, meaning they don't go deep necessarily, but they can still be very effective at the surface of the functionality of the types of technologies that are pervasive in the world right now. And so this is really what we set out to do. And we set out to do it by making it possible for people to make a prototype. So we identified the ability to make a prototype and use the prototype to test the market, go into the marketplace and have people use the prototype, and then use those results to be able to prove the concept and then be able to raise money. And that really is a rationale we had. And of course, this is interfacing between, as you put it, Wilson, those people who are students within the academic setting and the marketplace. So having this bridge is what we set out to do. And we've been quite successful. But the Fab Lab at the University of Nairobi, I mentioned bureaucracy. We needed to shift out and be independent. And so we set up a non-profit called Gearbox. And Gearbox then has gone on to set up using the model that Sarah described in the introduction, which is like a gym. So people pay membership and come into the space and use the machines after getting training, safety and basic use training. And this we modeled on Tech Shop, which is a similar kind of a space in the US, which has since folded. So it's very important to be able to sustain the activities that we set out to. So if an organization like Tech Shop in a country like the US, which has a large population of people who are in the DIY, the do-it-yourself space, they have this hobbyist culture, they have available income to be able to pay for the membership model and to buy materials and so on. If that entity folded and was unable to get a model that was financially sustainable, then how much more difficult is it in a country like Kenya? So we've had to pivot, change our model because there weren't enough people who were really able to pay the gym membership, which was equivalent of $100 per month to come in every day, or $40 per month to come in 2 days a week, or you could just come in for one day, which would be at about $10. on a daily basis. But this model really wasn't giving us the kind of traffic that we hoped for and were expecting, which our model was depending on. And so we had to set up Gearbox Academy. And so with Gearbox Academy now, we are taking not university type courses, not TVET type courses, but short courses that are modular, and with about 20 contact hours with the instructor, and maybe 5 times that number of hours in terms of the students, the requirement for them to do the projects, because it's very, very hands-on. And then we selected 8 areas that you could describe as being part of the 4th Industrial Revolution. So things like embedded systems, digital design and fabrication, virtual reality and augmented reality, machine learning and artificial intelligence, robotics, industrial IoT, and so on and so forth. And so we offer these courses, and we try to be as flexible as possible so people who are working can come. And also in terms of the curriculum and the pedagogy, we make sure that you can meet the need of both of somebody who has an engineering background, but also somebody who doesn't have an engineering background. And of course, for these courses, we charge a fee. And we begin, before we get into the technical training, we begin with human-centered design. So this is a cornerstone. So we want, before you get into your technical skills, you need to understand how to select a project, because you'll be expected to do a project as part of the course. And this project must be selected on the basis of market needs. So therefore, human-centered design is the first thing you're taught. And this is very practical, very hands-on. We go out into the communities to discover and to teach that. And then hopefully at the end of the day, once you've created your project, you may be on your way to starting a business. And of course, not everybody is set out to starting not everybody has the character or personality, the skill set to start a business. So very often we also have people come in to train the young people on how businesses are set up, maybe how you might be the technical lead in the business, but you might hire a CEO who might do some of the things that may sound glamorous. The title CEO sounds glamorous, but a CEO is doing a lot of stuff that is not glamorous at all. And very often technical people, they fed up of HR and applying for tax, this and that, and so on and so forth. So, trying to really get people's minds to be oriented around what it takes to start a business. So this really forms the backdrop of what we do. And I guess I could really go on, but maybe you might want to come in, and if there's something that you want me to speak a little bit more about, for example, sustainability and so on, I'd be more than happy to do that. Thank you, Wilson.
Thank you very much, Kamau. And I'm sure we have a subject here to talk for hours and hours and hours. And thank you, of course, for this glimpse that you gave on the past, on the origins of the Gearbox, what motivated you, what led you to be where you are today, the challenge that you were supposed to face at the time, and the main concepts, the main aspects behind or underlying the concept of the Gearbox. Of course, I thank you for your opening remarks. We'll get back to you in our Q&A session. And if you allow me now, I would move to Mr. George Makateto. And of course, invite him to share the screen with me here today. And thank Mr. Makateto for being with the BILT community for the first time. And Mr. Makateto will be representing the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives in Kenya. And as we all know, government bodies play a very prominent role in the triple helix model of innovation by providing what we call the frame conditions for innovation to flourish. In the case of Kenya, our research showed that one of the elements creating these frame conditions to foster innovation can be found in the country industrial development strategy. So taking this strategy into consideration, I would like to ask Mr. Makateto, could you explain for us or elaborate how organizations such as Gearbox support the implementation of the Kenya Industrial Development Strategy?
Gearbox is very important in the implementation of our industrial strategy. In Kenya, we have what is called National Industrialization Policy and other related policy. Gearbox is quite important suppliers of innovation and software intensive products, and this one ensures its furtherance of implementation of the industrial development strategies which are existing. Now, the presence of Gearbox in our country ensures that the ministry can utilize the local resources, which is one of them is Gearbox, to incentivize other upcoming startups to promote industrial development. This one can be done through linkages and so on and so forth. Gearbox also promotes human resource development due to the practical knowledge they acquire when they engage with Gearbox, either directly or indirectly, and also passing the same information mainly to prospective engineers within the country. Gearbox also contributes to the increase of development in engineering field, thus increasing contribution to manufacturing sector in the country. Kenya electronics industry is still nonsense. I mean, it's still new, still small. Thus, a firm Gearbox is introducing engineering and electronic cluster within the country, which was not there before. Thus, ensures that the cluster approach to industrial development is nurtured within the country. It also assists in supporting the local industries, as I had mentioned earlier, through resource development, human resource development function, technology transfer, enhancing entrepreneurship in engineering area, ensuring incubation, consultative, and also ensuring consultancy function for management skills, among others. Also, the presence of Gearbox also ensures that other linkages can be supported, especially I'm thinking of subcontracting and partnership exchange programs as one of the key attributes of industrial development. It also ensures development of SME sector because most startups start small, but with time they increase in size. So that in short is what I can present about how Gearbox can assist us in promoting. I'm a director in engineering and construction industries. One of the areas I promote is electronics engineering, and Gearbox is actually sitting in that space where we co-work and support that sector. Maybe for now I can stop there.
Thank you very much, Mr. Makateto. And I think you addressed a lot of issues that are very pertinent for organizations such as Gearbox. And it's clear for us that it's a multi-dimensional endeavor, right? So it has effects in many different areas of the society. And also, of course, it has a catalyst role of that. So the investment that is made in institutions like this, they have the ability to be multiplied, to have a multiplying effect throughout the society. And maybe, because what you said was very interesting, could you briefly elaborate about if is there any other initiative from the government to foster this kind of institutions to be created across Kenya? Is there any particular program related to that?
Yeah, thank you, Namit. Yeah, thank you very much. There's a program to promote, as I said earlier, industrial clusters. And one of the clusters which is still new is the electronics cluster, which Gearbox sits very well, but Gearbox is able to create other clusters in engineering. But for now, we've noticed electronics cluster. So we are able to identify other players in the sector who can partner with Gearbox. Already we've been able to identify. And within the country, there's a program which the government has been trying to promote. We're in the process of actualizing it further. started, but in the phase 2, we're hoping that institutions like Gearbox will play a bigger role. This one is a program in Kenya called Digital Learning Process, where digital learning is introduced in our schools. And we were hoping that with these new clusters, therefore, organizations like Gearbox will be used to produce some of the gadgets which will be used for this program. Apart from that, we have other programs which will introduce, especially digitizing government agencies. But that one we have not started. But the one which you've identified, for example, is digital learning process. Apart from that, because as I said initially, Gearbox, this sector, especially for electronics or engineering startup, was not so much there. As we proceed, we should also be able to support organizations like Gearbox and the other partners with policy and legislative framework. And for the projects they are going to do locally, also with standard support, because also the standard organization also exists in our ministry. We should also be able to assist them with more linkages, especially when we notice that there is need for linkages. I submit.
Wilson, can I add something?
Please, Kamau, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Yeah, so we also are very grateful because one of the projects that Mr. Makateto hinted at that the government is very busy doing is Buy Kenya, Build Kenya. And so the whole idea, and I think this is true in many jurisdictions around the world, is to try to use taxpayer money. The government is the biggest procurer in any country, and to see whether they can maximize the amount that they're procuring from Kenyan sources. And so we have been supported by the department of where Mr. Makateto is a director, to be able to link up. And I'll give you a couple of examples. We are discussing very actively with the Ministry of Health, with the support from Ministry of Industrialization, to be able to make hospital beds, to be able to make things like trolleys for the hospital out of stainless steel, a variety of fairly low-tech objects, but at the same time, because we have the electronic capacity, and through a joint venture with a British firm, Europlacer, we're able to manufacture any type of printed circuit board. So with that capacity, we have, for example, a project where a ventilator was made, especially because, of course, of COVID. And so we're able to make this kind of circuit in-house, and then the government can give us orders so that we're assured that we can pass these business opportunities on to young Kenyans, maybe not very young Kenyans, who are local, and that's bringing the higher tech type business into the country, which is obviously very, very important for countries that are considered to be emerging economies and so on. So we want to be able to duplicate what was done in the Far East by countries like Japan and South Korea, and now you're seeing Malaysia and Vietnam, really climbing and growing. And I think that these government policies that couple with organizations like ours, and generally the TVET infrastructure, and also the universities, to be able to do what we say, Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, is very critical. So I just wanted to interject that. And also from the point of view of sustainability, we have Gearbox, I mentioned, is a non-profit. We have 2 for-profit companies. One is a joint venture that does the circuits, the printed circuit boards, as I mentioned, with the British firm. And then the second one is a company called Machine Africa Network of Industries. And this company's purpose is to be able to create micro industries in the manner that I described during the video, but they are both for-profits. And that's an important thing because they give revenues, some of the revenue sharing back to Gearbox, because Gearbox is a pipeline. And so the model on how to create the sustainable, economically sustainable way to have a platform like Gearbox being able to survive has to do very much with having for-profit companies linked to it, to be able then to share the revenues back. So I thought I'd interject that to just complete the picture. Thank you, Wilson. And thank you, Mr. Makateto.
Yeah, thank you both. Thank you, Kamau, for adding this piece of information that I think it's very relevant and it's a very practical one that I think broaden the perspective on how Gearbox works and operates. So thank you very much for your intervention. And thank you very much, Mr. Makateto, for your opening remarks. And of course, we will get back to you during our question and answer session. Now, I would like to invite Mrs. Mati to share the screen with me. And I welcome you, Mrs. Mati, to the Learning Lab. And you are here. You are here today representing one of the players that are active in the skills and innovation ecosystem. You represent a new generation, I think, of entrepreneurs, one that aims in developing alternative or innovative ways to produce without losing sight of the affordability or the sustainability aspects of their production. So you founded Ginger Market as a business that produces building materials from plastic waste, correct? So could you please let us know how your company addressed the aforementioned issues of sustainability and affordability in construction in Kenya? And if you can complement how Gearbox helped you along this path. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Wilson, for the floor. Yes, my name is Nzambi Mate, a founder of Jijenge Makers Limited. Jijenge Makers is an alternative, affordable building product manufacturing company located here in Nairobi, Kenya. And our first product lines are pavers used in sidewalks, driveways, footpaths, made out of recycled waste plastic. We've been in operation now for 3 years, but in terms of existence, including the research and development phase, it has been 6 years. And it's that said and done that I would love, first of all, before anything else, to give a huge vote of thanks and gratitude to Dr. Kamau and Gearbox in general for giving us a platform as to which where it acted as a soundboard for us to pivot and move on to the next level. Because I remember I came to Gearbox and all I had was just an idea. That was plus minus about 5 years ago, if I'm not wrong. And I came and I was like, I think this is what I want. I see an opportunity where you can convert plastic waste into an affordable building product because, you know, plastic waste and plastic pollution is not just a Kenya problem, it's a worldwide problem. And at the same time, we have this demand, a huge demand for affordable housing. And so how, with the thinking I had is how do we use this one problem to act as a solution for this problem? And hence started Jijenge Makers. So we did a prototype for the conversion and the research and development phase of testing of making that one brick. And then when we had that one brick, we came to Gearbox and like, hey, so we know how to make one brick converted from plastic waste. So how do we make 1,000? Ideally speaking, we cannot make 1,000 in a short time span, and therefore in a way that makes economic sense. And so that necessitated the element of having machinery. And so what we did is instead of having to go get the machines outside Kenya, as it's pretty much the norm, we decided, why don't we build it here locally? And that's where Gearbox came in very handy. So we started prototyping and testing the machineries that we have just to see, okay, fine, we have this idea. We know we need something of these elements. We need different elements within a production line. And so how do we start making it? So with the platform we were able to use both the design team, a lot of the design team within the Gearbox, and also the fabrication team to just start testing a few things here and there. And 5 years down the line, we're fortunate enough to say that we've been able to produce a whole production line that can be able to recycle about 20 to 100 metric tons of plastic waste every month. And so now our next level is now that we've figured out the basics of the tech part, how do we move on to bringing the machine now from just a mechanical level into the software space. So right now, as we speak, we're prototyping now to bring on board IoT systems to be able to control. So where we can automate the process, we are able to automate the process and try and remove as much human interaction, because we've realized that creates less efficiency. And so if we bring on board the IoT systems to increase the efficiency, therefore we're able to produce more product, or we're making economic sense. Because what we've realized is by us being able to not only provide products that are sustainable, affordable, and reliable, but the products that make economic sense by being cheaper, 15% cheaper to be specific, then we're able to provide a solution that is wholesome and make sense. And so for us, that is the engagement we have, and that's the engagement we hope to continue, even as we move now, hopefully we move the whole tech and the production line into the proper fourth industrial revolution. Wherefore, in the future, we might embed more IoT systems and maybe AI in future. So let's sit back and relax and then watch the future, what has to hold for us. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your inspiring words, and I'm very glad to hear this perspective on where you came from, where you are, and the future perspective. Maybe a very quick question: do you receive any kind of support for commercializing the products? So Gearbox operates at this stage as well?
Yes, so Gearbox has been a partner from the beginning and still continues now and hopefully in the future. And so we have three elements that we get assistance from. Number one is the tapping into the Makerspace and using their facilities. So our offices, our company offices, are located within the Gearbox Makerspace. The other element is we're able to tap into the networks, because being a micro enterprise, we need to be able to have partners like Gearbox to be able to reach, to have reach for the likes of the government, because right now, as we speak, the government under the Ministry of Transportation is one of our customers, and this we're able to get through the networks we got tapping into the Gearbox. And then the third space, and this is for me one of the most important thing as a founder and as a young entrepreneur, is constant mentorship, whether it's within the financial structure, whether it's within the operational structure. Because one thing, and as to what Dr. Kamau said, sometimes having the role of CEO tends to be very romanticized, but in real sense, it might not be as lovely as it sounds. And so if you're able to have partners who are able to help make work easy, like Gearbox, I'll take the soft life. So yes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mati. Thank you. And now I love your remarks and your perspective. And now I would like it to be complemented by Mr. Kimali. So Mr. Nicholas Kimali, I invite you to share the screen with me. And Mr. Kimali founded Feather Electrics Limited, which has a motto of engineering and technology with creativity. Am I correct, Mr. Kimali?
Yes, you're very much correct.
Okay, so one of the projects that you have been developing is a speed limiter, correct? Can you please let us know what it's all about and what was Gearbox support in terms of conceptualization, development, and commercialization of the speed limiter? Thank you.
Thank you, Wilson. So to start off, Feather Electrics was actually founded when I was a member of the Fab Lab. Dr. Kamau Gachigi founded the Fab Lab at the University of Nairobi. And I would say Fab Lab was really good. It gave us a space. I was a student at the University of Nairobi. It gave us a space where, we could prototype and, also learn a lot of things in terms of technology. And it motivated me to start a company for research and development in product development. So, as Dr. Kamau has mentioned, there were challenges in Fab Lab, and I think it's challenges in terms of growth. And when Dr. Kamau started Gearbox, which I would say it's a super Fab Lab on steroids, you know, very, very huge. And then with this technological advancements, the machines and the tools to help us, the entrepreneurs, to make stuff, I actually became a member of Gearbox immediately. And the government of Kenya put a law into place to have all the public service vehicles be fitted with a speed limiter. So at this time, the speed limit was to be capped at 80 kilometers per hour. And Further Electrics partnered with a company called Dalcom Kenya in the development of a speed governor. And the brand of this speed governor was Omata Speed Governor, which was actually locally designed at Gearbox. It was designed at Gearbox. We actually did our prototype here at Gearbox, and it went to be the best-selling speed governor in Kenya, commanding like a very huge percentage of the market. And after that, we actually got, this led to partnerships with other transport regulatory authorities from other countries, including Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Rwanda as well. And we were able to export this speed limiter to these countries as well, as they sought to curb accidents in their respective countries. So Gearbox has really helped me a lot when it comes to, it has been pivotal, it has played a pivotal role in the development of the speed limiter, and also providing a rapid prototyping platform. In addition, I easily gained the confidence of all my clients when they visited the space at Gearbox, and you know, they alleviated all the doubts that about being able to deliver the project. You know, most of the companies were importing these speed limiters from developed countries, China, the US, the UK, but then these was a locally designed speed limiter, and it went on to be the best-selling speed limiter in Kenya, and also exported to other countries as well.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimali. It's very inspiring, and I think facts are even better when you have facts like you became a big exporter, a best-selling product. It is, I think, it's very inspirational for our audience. And I thank you. And with your remarks, we are closing the second session of our learning lab. That's the panel session. And we are starting now the third session. That's the question and answer session. At this stage, I invite our guests to turn on the cam. And now we will take questions from our audience to you. So for our audience, you could either raise your hand and pose your questions orally. That's the first option that we can offer. Or the second, you can put your questions on the chat, and my colleagues working in the background will make sure your question reach me and I can ask them directly to our guests. So please, you are now invited to participate and to interact directly with our esteemed guests that we have here today.
Good morning, colleagues in Tibet. My name is Nevan Jufndong. I work for UNESCO in the Youth Empowerment to Tibet project. And part of our interest is that we also have a component on startup helping Tibet institutions to a startup incubator, so to strengthen their startup incubator system. My particular question is that is Gearbox open to supporting interest groups from outside of Kenya? So if we had students from the Gambia who are interested in taking up training through Gearbox, is that accessible? So if so, how could you contact, who can be contacted, and how this process might be facilitated to make sure that they can come on board such trainings? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Thanks very much. In fact, the name that we chose for ourselves, which reflects our strategic plan for the long term, is Gearbox Pan-African Network. And when we call ourselves that, what we believe very much is that the model that we have can apply in many countries. But of course, if we were to partner with anybody in any other country, or rather if we were to venture into another country on the continent, we would need to do it through a partnership, because we don't know that country as the local players would. So we'd love to be able to do that. We do plan to do that. We hope maybe with our partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, that might be one way in which we can enter into other countries. Now, your specific question has to do with students from, say, any country coming in to partake in one of our courses. My email is in the chat. I'm more than happy to consider that. We would then be able to explain what our fee structures are. But obviously, there'd be probably two ways to do that. One would be online, so that the students would be sitting wherever they are. And much as is done in many parts of the world, the instruction could be done online. And there'd be a requirement, however, that they are able to purchase certain types of devices and materials in country to be able, and then maybe also access certain kinds of machines, depending on what the exact course is. So the possibility for actually conducting the course online will depend on what the subject matter is. So for example, it'll be much easier to do embedded systems, where you're looking at an Arduino, Raspberry Pi, these kinds of circuits that are available in many places, and then the instructions coming from instructors that are here or even elsewhere, as the case may be. And this is very much like the model that's done with Fab Academy. Fab Lab Network does this, where you have the professor at MIT teaching people in many parts of the world, and they just have to synchronize on the timing. Alternatively, you could have students coming into Kenya, and obviously that would be more difficult and require accommodation, flights, this and that. So I think probably the online option would be more practical and easier to do. Just to differentiate again, the embedded systems is the example I gave, which is probably the easiest to launch. If you were to do digital design and fabrication, the digital design part, which is computer-aided design, could be done quite easily online. But then the computer-aided manufacturing part, where you have a CNC machine, which would need to be in place, a computer numerical control machine, the type of machine that is directed from the computer, that then would need to be accessible to the students wherever they might be. So I think that's where maybe a local TVET could come in and provide that accessibility. I hope that answers your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Kamau. We have now another hand raised here, Mr. Abu Zaid. Mr. Abu Zaid, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson, Dr. Kamau, the guest speakers. Thank you for the very informative information. Actually, my question is to Dr. Kamau. Since the Gearbox not targeting a specific scope of people that comes from a specific background, I mean, it's for public. So if there is any kind of prerequisites required for the membership, I mean, if someone has zero background in using some of the machineries, some of the maybe an application running machineries, so are you providing maybe like an just a short course, or just maybe an orientation on how to use, or there is maybe some restrictions about the level of the end user who will get into the membership? Thank you.
Thank you. That's a great question. And in fact, there are two ways in which we do training. One is within the context of Gearbox Academy. And that's where you have these eight subject areas that I talked about. And in that instance, it will be necessary as in terms of prerequisites for people to have a good understanding on general use of computers. So, you know, how to navigate various types of software and so on. And then you again have two different types of student, broadly speaking, one that has an engineering background and the other that does not. So then our curriculum and teaching will be catered to these two different groups. And we have a lot of sessions with gurus, meaning that the students, you might have a class of 20 is the maximum size for one class. And when the 20 are in the space, there are gurus going around, people who have high technical skill, who are giving individualized advice apart from the broader plenary type class session that's given. Now, the second type of training that we do is outside of Gearbox entirely. And this is what we're doing, and we have been doing with the MasterCard Foundation and the Kenya Commercial Bank Foundation, directed at artisans, people in the informal sector, very often people who have very little education and very often no experience on computers and so on. And in this type of training, we're teaching mostly skills like welding and the use of various types of typical analog tools like grinders, drills, and all this sort of thing. We can move up to powder coating, vacuum forming, a variety of these sorts of skills. And in that case, then the prerequisites are much lower. And the certification comes through a national body here called the National Industrial Training Authority, which is in terms of its scope and responsibility, it's responsible for regulating training in the workplace as opposed to within educational institutions. It's just like Senai, very similar to Senai in Brazil. In fact, that's how I met Wilson when I was touring Brazil to understand Senai and that model. So we are offering certification that is coming from industrial training setup in terms of that second class of training. So I hope that answers your question. We also, just to finish, on the website, we also have some tests that when we're asking, like, for example, there are 4 levels of embedded systems and all the other 8 courses in Gearbox Academy. There's introductory, intermediate, advanced, and expert. And so there are a number of questions that we have available for a person to browse through to try to place themselves so that they can have a good self-assessment of which level they think they fall under. And so when they apply, then they're hopefully getting into the level that is appropriate for them. And if they're not accurate in that self-assessment, then it'll become evident during the courses if they're in the wrong level of class. So I hope that answers your question, Mr. Abuzad.
Thank you very much, Kamau. We are running out of time here, but I'm tempted to take one more question, and I will do so. So I invited Dr. Kingsley. Please, Dr. Kingsley, feel free to address our guests.
Greetings, everyone. My question is to Dr. Kamau. So thank you for the great work you are doing, especially in Kenya. And I agree with you that there's a need indeed to expand your operations across Africa. Now, and of course, you mentioned the need for partnership if you're moving outside Kenya. What is the extent or what type of partnership do you envision? I am actually special advisor to one of the governors of the state in Nigeria called Enugu State. So special advice on education. And we are looking for partnerships in the area of TVET. In fact, we're engaging on this platform through GIZ partnership that we have. So to what extent would you want to partner? Is it with the private sector or with the public sector? And if it's the government or the public sector, to what extent would you want to partner? What would it involve? Thank you.
You're muted, Kamau.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry. Thanks, Dr. Uda. I'm really glad you asked this question because it's a very important element of our experience that I'd like to share. The reason why Gearbox is not at University of Nairobi, I mentioned, is because of the bureaucracy. I think an organization like Gearbox is better done independently of the institution, like a TVET or a university. But obviously, the people who perhaps will benefit the most are the people at the institution, so the students and the faculty, from having a facility like this. So an error that I believe is often made is for an organization like, let's say, a TVET to say, we've raised money, we want to have a setup that is an incubation space that has prototyping facilities, much like I've described and you've seen in the video for Gearbox. And then the administration at that institution appoints an existing lecturer, for example, or professor to run it on the assumption that their technical understanding is enough for them to understand how best to run this incubation space. I think that's an error. And I think as well as that, the bureaucracy, like for example, if you're in a TVET and you're running a space like this, and then you want to buy materials, you want to buy tool bits, and you have to apply to the central bursar within the institution and go through the whole procurement process, which used to take us months at the University of Nairobi, and in some instances years. This is no way to run. This is the best way to kill the initiative. So, you know, you need to have an institute, and this is something that's done in countries like Israel. I've had the honor of going to Israel to see some of the very incredible setups at universities and so on, where they have the entity within the university, but it's run independently. It may even be owned by the university fully, but it does its accounting after the fact, like a business unit. So you can go, you have a budget, you spend what you need without asking to buy a pen or whatever. And then you can account after the fact for what you've done with the money that you had. I think this is very critical. So you need to have the person who's hiring, who's running this center to be independent and allowed to have that space to be able to operate like a business, to have the nimbleness to be able to do what's necessary when it's necessary. And also very often in our organizations and everywhere really, you have politics, institutional politics. So sometimes you get people who are put into place for the wrong reasons. I've been to Fab Lab meetups where, you know, you have a person who runs a Fab Lab in a certain country coming to attend, who is a bureaucrat really and doesn't understand anything about the actual fabrication and did not give the opportunity to the technical person to go to the meetup, which is what should have happened. So for a number of reasons, which I think a lot of people can relate to, it's important to have this independence between the organization and the running of the unit that we're speaking of. So I hope that answers your question, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to clarify that point.
Thank you very much once again, Kamau. And before I hand the floor back to my colleague Sarah, I would like to say a special thank you for all the guests that have been with us today, Mr. Kimali, Mrs. Mati, Mr. Makateto, and a special thanks, of course, to you, Kamau, always supportive and a very good reference that UNESCO-UNEVOC has in the field of TVET. And personally, I'm very glad to see that our main purpose has been reached with this learning lab, or it's now been reached. That's creating this bridge. It's creating possibilities of partnerships among us, among those in the forefront of the teaching and learning in TVET. So thank you very much for your participation with us today. And I give the floor back to Sarah that will guide you through the remaining of the event. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I wish to echo Wilson's thanks to Kamau, George, Nzambi and Nicholas. Thank you for your time, and thank you for giving such a clear, practical and enthusiastic explanation of Gearbox Makerspace in Kenya. It's very much appreciated from the BILT project that you have given this time to us today. Now, in terms of the options for participants, as explained at the outset, we will continue this discussion more informally for another 30 minutes. Please feel free to join us. As I said, it will be less formal, it won't be moderated, but you will have a chance to interact with our 4 speakers and discuss in more detail. For those of you who are about to say goodbye, I just want to thank you for participating. I think that we've learned a lot from the presentations. I think Kamau has made clear the multiple benefits of the Gearbox Makerspace in terms of encouraging and supporting young people and to produce products locally. I think there was a clear trade-off that Kamau touched upon at the end about the importance of makerspaces having some independence, whilst at the same time being cooperative and collaborative organisations with other local partners, from training providers to businesses and to local and national government organisations. I think that trade-off was very interesting, Kamau, thank you very much. You also highlighted the key challenge of creating a financially sustainable model, and maybe that's something we can discuss more in the next half an hour. Again, for those of you that are leaving, I want to say a few words about an upcoming Learning Lab. We will soon be announcing our 3rd Learning Lab in the series. This will be an example from Europe. And the current plan is that we will have practical examples of some the use of EdTech in TVET delivery. So to those of you about to go, thank you again for participating. And for those of you staying within the Zoom meeting, we look forward to discussing with you. Thank you.